Hello, and welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about the idea that you probably know more about your true, authentic self than you think you do. Because I know for a lot of us in the world today, right? I think a lot of us feel like we don't know who we are. Like we don't really know what our authentic self is, and we feel like we're missing something. And we feel like we need some sort of like ayahuasca retreat or plant medicine, or we need to like go on some big self-discovery journey, or we feel like there's some big key that's missing that would help us understand who we really are and what we're here to do and what our authentic self is. And we again just feel over and over and over again like at the end of the day, we like go to bed and we just feel like I don't really know who I am. And this is something that I actually encounter a lot in my one-on-one sessions with people. Like there's just like this common narrative, this constant narrative of like, Allie, you don't understand that I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't know really anything that's true about me. And so this is part of the reason why my life isn't put together. This is why I can't find the right job. This is why I can't find the right relationships. This is why I'm in so much pain. Like, I don't feel connected to my life. I don't feel connected to my choices. I don't feel like I really know who I am and therefore what I'm supposed to do in this life. And again, this is something that we talk a lot about in the mystery school, because again, it is my perspective after working with people for the last 15 years and doing a lot of this work and being in the spirituality, self-help, personal growth community since I was 14 years old, like kind of watching these patterns and watching how people live their lives and why they kind of get to the place that they're at, I have come to see that most of the time, people actually do know way more about themselves than they think that they do. Or they are struggling to connect the dots between what they're feeling in their bodies and what they're feeling in their emotions and the thoughts that they're thinking and the things that they're attractive to, and they're having trouble understanding that so much of that information they actually already have. They just don't know how to acknowledge it, they don't know how to own it, and they don't know how to make it real in their day-to-day life. They don't know how to live out what they do know about themselves. Or they are stuck in loops and patterns of having shame, blame, and guilt about the things they do know about themselves. So people do actually have an understanding. They do actually have quite a bit of awareness of the things that they like and the things that they don't like and the things that they want to do and the things that they don't want to do. But they think that those are the things that are wrong with them, that they have to fix in order to become this person they think they're supposed to be. Right? So rather than actually looking for who they really are and trying to live that out, they feel like they have an idea in their head of who they're supposed to be, and they don't realize that they have that. And then they're trying to become that by trying to get rid of what they actually are. And then they feel like they don't know who they are. And then a lot of the time, again, the other big bottom line is that many of us were just never made to be safe to be who we are. We were not taught that it is okay for us to be what we are and to express what we are and to live how we are. Again, we were taught that what we are and who we are is shameful and wrong and bad, right? We didn't come up with this idea that there's something wrong with us or that we have to change ourselves by ourselves. We came up with that because we were taught that. We came up with that because we experienced being rejected, being misunderstood, being outrightly shamed, abused, neglected. We had all of these experiences. So again, there are levels of learning to dissociate from our emotions, learning to dissociate from what feels good and what feels bad for us, learning to dissociate from how we actually feel about things, and then living in a way that contradicts what we know about ourselves because we feel like we have to in order to be loved, accepted, and approved of. Okay, so this is why, again, in the mystery school, we just talk so much about getting past the shame, blame, and guilt. Because for so many of us, this is really what's blocking us from becoming aware of who we really are, as in becoming aware of the information we already have about ourselves. And it's what's blocking us from being able to live it, because rather than being able to, again, own our feelings and own the things that we like and own the things that we don't like and to live in alignment with that, we already have an idea in our head that those things are wrong, that those things are bad, that that's not how we're supposed to be. And therefore we have to fix and change ourselves. So we think we don't know who we are, when really we do know who we are, but who we are is being rejected. And those are two very different things, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I really want to explore the idea that you probably know more about yourself than you actually do. And I want to give you some tools, so hopefully some practical tools that you can walk away with from this video to help you start to understand that you probably already know a lot more about yourself than you think that you do. And I want to help you be able to own that a little bit more, because again, that's a big thing. And then the last thing is, a lot of us write off what we know about ourselves because it's just so obvious to us that we think this must be how everyone is. So we're not noticing the things about us that are special, that are unique, that absolutely are characteristics of who and what we are, that are information about what we're here to do and what would work for us in our lifestyles and all of this, because we just think, well, yeah, but everyone is like that, right? Like, isn't everyone interested in these things? Isn't everyone thinking about this stuff? Isn't everyone doing all this? And it's like, no, that's not what everyone is like. That's not how everyone feels. That's not what everyone thinks. That's unique to you. And so again, we can kind of get lost in our own perspective, and we think we don't know about ourselves, when really we're just saying who I am is how everyone is, because that's our perspective. When in reality, no, that is unique to you and that's how you are. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about today, in terms of like actually making this practical, is for a lot of us, the idea of discovering who we are is being filtered through the lens of capitalism, of productivity, of consumption and production. Meaning, we are being indoctrinated to believe that a big part of who we are, that a large part of discovering our true self, is tied in with figuring out what job we are here to do, how we can serve the capitalist structure, and the idea of purpose and passion and authenticity has been completely married with this idea of, if you really know who you are and you really know your passion and you really understand yourself, you are therefore going to know what you're supposed to do with your life in terms of a career, and that that's supposed to be your passion, and that we're supposed to all have a career that we love, that we identify with as being like, this is part of who I am, and therefore it's what I do. Do you see what I'm saying here? That a lot of us have been conditioned that if I really knew myself, I would therefore know what my perfect career is. And that these two things are so deeply intertwined that we're not recognizing that our humanity is so much bigger and so much more all-encompassing than what we do for money, than what we do as a service to others, than what we do as a service on this planet, okay? So I really want you to stop and ask yourself right here, right now, is your definition of knowing yourself, your definition of living an authentic life, is it deeply intertwined with thinking this should lead to a career or a job or a a thing you do in the world, a thing you do for others, a thing that you can say, like, I am a doctor, I am a mother, I am a housemaker, I am a whatever. And that to you is synonymous with knowing yourself. Because if it is, I really want to say to you, who you are and what you are is so much bigger and more nuanced and textured and layered than what you do in the world. And the idea that all of us, when we discover our true selves, are going to then simultaneously discover a passion that we want to turn into a career, or that we want to build our entire lifestyle around, or our entire identity around, the idea that that is true, the idea that that is what finding your identity is a lie. Okay? You can know so much about yourself and end up working odd jobs that cover the rent and cover the bills for the rest of your life, and never having like a set career, because we are not all here to do something that fits perfectly into capitalism. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want to offer is, are you narrowing your version and your definition of knowing yourself as, if I really knew myself, I would have the ideal career. If I really knew myself, I would know what my purpose is, and my purpose is something that I do in the world, that I give, that is either a job or, like some sort of activity that I am going to build my entire life around. And I just want to poke holes in that, because a lot of us are going to discover that, number one, we don't have a singular focused passion that is the one thing we care about, and that's who we are, and that's what we want to build our lives around. That is not a given that every single person has that. Okay? So I just want to put it out there that if you're limiting yourself to the idea that I only know myself once I discover my perfect career that I want to build my whole life around, this might not be true for you. Okay? So some people out there, in discovering who they are, do also discover that they want to turn something that they're really passionate about into their career. But I also want to put out there that if you don't have things that you know about yourself, that you do, that have nothing to do with that career, that have nothing to do with that passion, if you don't know other aspects of yourself other than that thing you do in the world, you are going to be a miserable person. You are going to burn yourself out. You are going to continually feel like you're never doing enough, and like the career is not enough, and like it's unfulfilling. Because even having that can never be something that actually satisfies you on a human level. So some of us don't even have that. Some of us are going to discover that we are not the kind of person who has a singular passion that we can turn into a career that is who we are, and that is what we are here to do, and now I know myself. Some of us will never have that. Some of us will work odd jobs and do things that are just, to make ends meet, and we like it enough that we can support ourselves in living the rest of our lives, having our hobbies, having our things we enjoy, having our time to have relationships, having time to have, space to meditate and to move your body and to eat healthy food or whatever it is that you want to eat, and to just, spend the rest of your time doing other things that you like doing. And you don't have a thing that you do that is your purpose, and oh my God, this is your life-changing, world-changing thing. Some of us will never have that. And that is legitimate. That is okay. That is normal. Lots of other cultures that are not centered around the consumption production model that we have in the Western world, people work so that they can live. They don't live to work. This idea of people living their passion in their job isn't a thing. They work to offer what they have to offer to the community so that everyone can get their needs met, and they work just enough to get things done so they can spend the rest of their time doing other things. Now, I want to validate and I want to also put out there that in our system right now, in the Western world, in capitalism, all these things, it is getting harder and harder and harder to have a work-life balance. It is getting harder and harder and harder to be able to work just enough to make ends meet and to still have a good life on the side. I validate that, and that is shitty, and that is not your fault, and I hate that that is the way that it is. And that is a huge problem, and that is part of why I talk so much about those of us who do have enough and those of us being in the middle needing to divest from this system of hyper-consumption and hyper-production, because we are contributing to the unfair balance that is creating the situation where people who are more at the bottom of the system have less and less resources and less time and more exploitation, because those at the top keep taking more and more and more and more and more for themselves by overworking and overproducing and overtaking and being in it when we don't need to be. Okay? So when we can start to decondition ourselves as people who do generally have enough, as people who are able to kind of make ends meet without having to go overboard, that we do it, that we divest from this system of way too much, because it is, I believe, our responsibility to start to invest in a new system where more and more people can have enough by us not taking more than we need. Okay? So this is a big thing. So I am not trying to say that all of us could just work odd jobs and that could be enough. I know that a lot of us out there are stuck working shitty jobs in shitty fields where we are exploited, and we are not paid enough and we are not given enough, and it's very stressful, and then we can't have a good life on the side. So of course we want to believe that I can find a passion in something that I love, that I can find work that I love. So even though I have to work, like work has to be so much of my life in order for me to make ends meet, that I can like it and enjoy it. I get that. Okay? So what we want to focus on there is to understand that even if you are in that situation, do not look at yourself as being worthy or unworthy, good or not good, valid and worthy of fair treatment and fair pay and goodness, because society isn't valuing your labor right now. Just because society is not valuing your labor does not mean that you are not valuable, does not mean that you don't deserve a work-life balance, does not mean that there is something wrong with you. There is something wrong with our system. Okay? Other cultures that work themselves around, we do enough work to take care of the needs of the community so that everyone can work just enough that they can then have a life outside of work. That is a much healthier system, and that is something we need to work towards. Okay? So the fact that a lot of us are in a situation where we do have enough, I really want to put it out there. This is where we do the deconstruction work. This is where it is up to us to say, okay, I don't need to do more. I don't need to go for bigger. I don't need to keep investing in the system that is then causing more and more exploitation on the bottom ends of this system. We do have the power to divest, to take enough. So again, I am not saying to go without. I am not saying harm yourself. I am not saying be as minimalist as possible. What I am saying is the more you choose not to continue to invest in things like fast fashion, in things like fast food, in things like these businesses that we know lead to the exploitation of their workers. When we divest from that stuff And instead we focus our energy and focus our money and focus our time, because we have it, on sustainable things, on supporting our community, less corporate support and more community support. When we have the time and the energy and the resources to do that, we should. Okay? If we have it, we should. And if you're not in that situation, please understand this is not your fault and it is not your job. And I really want you to see yourself again as valuable and worthy and amazing and worthy of your humanity, whether society is valuing your labor right now or not. Because that is not an actual true value statement on you. You, your labor, and you, your value are two different things. And just because society does not value your labor does not mean that you are not valuable. And we as human beings, again, that's another big thing. A huge part of divesting from this system is like, how do you interact with the people who are of low status in our society? Our janitors, our housekeepers, our people who are making less than a living wage. That's another huge thing. You can be part of the change by treating these people with kindness and respect. Even just that. Like, not looking at other people as less than you based on their status in the work culture. Not treating people as less than you, ever. But especially not living by the values of our corporate system that says the people who are respectable are the people who are making the most money. Because that's not real. That's not true. That's not actual anything. We need to change our value system. Humans are what have value. Labor is not what is valuable. Labor is done to support what is valuable, which is the human. Okay? So this is a big part of shifting. This idea of, do you really know who you are? Well, are you viewing yourself through the lens of your labor? Because if you are, we need to step out of that. Do you have enough? Are you doing enough? Good. Stop taking more. Stop doing more. I am heartily thanked for the resounding and valuable speech. Okay, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. If you have enough, if you're doing enough, if you have the resources to divest and reinvest in a new system, do it. It's a huge part of creating this world we want to create. And I think, again, we forget that so much of creating the world we want to create is in the things we do every single day. It's not in, again, like these big acts of protest or these big things we do. Not that those things aren't important sometimes, but how we live our lives and how we choose to spend our money and how we choose to spend our energy and who we invest in and the things we give time to. And even just, again, to just not participate in overdoing it disempowers the system. To just not participate, to just not do it, negative action, disassembles things. So that's point number 1. Don't look at yourself. Don't limit who you are to the lens of just what you do for labor, because that is not who you are. That might be a part of who you are. Okay? So even those of us who have a passion that we can turn into a career, if we don't have other things, if we are not taking care of the other parts of our lives, if we are not seeing ourselves as humans outside of our labor, we will burn ourselves out. We will not feel completely fulfilled by our passion. We will become obsessive. Our lives will get out of balance. We will overdo it. And I'm speaking from personal experience, right? Because I love this, what I do. This absolutely is my passion. And my passion is my career. And I am incredibly fortunate that those two things are the same thing. But at the same time, I am not willing to do any level of exploitation that I don't have to do, right? So I am lucky enough. I am personally in a position where I have a husband who makes a good income, which means I can charge next to nothing for my mystery school. I can put out so much content in that mystery school and never raise the price because I don't have to. I am in a position I don't have to put ads on my YouTube videos. So I don't have to support corporations. So I don't. And does that mean that my YouTube videos probably get way less views and way less traction than they could? Yep. Does that, and I don't do gimmicky things, I don't do what I eat in a days, I don't do all of these things because I don't have to. I am divesting from that system. And that means I have the time and the money left over to support local produce. That means I have time and the money left over that I don't have to buy new clothes ever. Everything I own is used. Like, I have the time for that. So I do it. I'm not saying everyone should do it. I'm not saying that is the responsibility of all people. I'm saying for me, as someone who has enough, that is my job. That is my responsibility. To then divest where I can divest. To not take more where I don't need to take more. And then to make sure that I have things that I do that aren't this. That I'm taking care of my humanity in ways that are not my labor. And understanding that even if you have a passion and a thing that you love that you're going to turn into a career, you're not always going to love it, right? I don't love every aspect of this. I'm not always passionate about this. I don't always have 100% enthusiasm about this. So I'm not thinking, oh my God, is this the wrong thing for me? Every day I wake up and I don't really want to do it. Because I'm understanding that, like, I'm a human. And every time, even having a career that I love and a thing that I like, I don't love it all the time. And I don't love every aspect of it. It is a lie that finding your passion and making your passion a career means that you'll never feel like you're working a day in your life and that's how you know you've done it right. Right? There are days where this feels like work. There are days where this is hard and not fun. And that's normal. But that doesn't mean that I don't know myself. That doesn't mean that I've got it wrong. Okay? So that's another thing. You might absolutely know what you want to do with your life, and you know what you enjoy, and you know what you're passionate about, and you're going to be like, yeah, but there are parts about it that I hate, and there are things that suck about it, and there are parts of getting to the career that I want that I don't enjoy. And I'm like, yeah, that's normal. That doesn't mean you're on the wrong track. That doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. That means life is always going to hand you stuff that you don't like, that aren't ideal. And we have to understand that no matter what we choose in life to do as a career, no matter what kind of relationship we choose, no matter what kind of lifestyle we're living, there are going to be parts of it we don't like. Okay, so this is another thing. You might know how you want to live. You might know you might be in the right kind of relationships that do work for you and all of this, but they're not perfect and they're not ideal. And therefore you think, maybe I don't actually know myself. Maybe I don't have this figured out. Maybe I'm missing something. And what I would offer is probably not. Right? If it's working well enough, if it's pretty great most of the time, you got it, right? It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be everything. Figuring out who you are and what kind of life you want to live does not equal I never have struggle again, I never have pain again, there aren't things that are misaligned that we have to work on, there aren't improvements we have to make, there aren't things we're going to have to work through that are shitty, and that there aren't just elements of it that are shitty. That is reality, right? Like, I live over in Asia instead of living in the Western world, and there are parts of it that are shitty. It's not perfect. Nothing is perfect. But it's definitely way better for me than living in the Western world. And I am incredibly privileged that I've been able to immigrate. But to think that this was going to be absolutely perfect and like ideal and blissful and no problem, of course not. There are so many challenges with living somewhere that is not your home country. And I am willing to eat that shit sandwich because it's better than the alternative. Do you see? So just because what you're living and what you're doing isn't perfect, isn't ideal, isn't the absolute most blissed out you've ever been, does not mean it's wrong, does not mean you don't know yourself, does not mean you're missing something. It means you're a human living a human life where there is normal bumps in the road that you're going to have to learn from. There are going to be challenges no matter what you choose. So really, stop looking for perfection. Don't look for your life to be perfect in order for you to think you've got it. You probably have it more figured out than you actually think. It's just that you're expecting that when I have it figured out, it's all going to be perfect. I'm going to have this perfect relationship. I'm going to have the perfect house. I'm going to have this dream travel life where it's all just fun and I can just hop around and do what I want. And it's like, that's not reality. The reality is it working pretty good for you most of the time? Then you're probably doing it right. Are there lots of bumps and bruises and things that are helping you grow? Things that are helping you change? Things that are helping you shift your perspective? Things that are maturing you because they don't go perfectly? Well, then you're probably doing it right. That's how life is going to be when we're living a totally aligned life. There's going to be challenge, there's going to be struggle, there's going to be hardship, there's going to be things that don't work out, there's going to be things that we think we wanted and things we needed that we never get. There are going to be things that come up that we never expected, and it's still right. So the second thing I want to ask you is, what shit sandwich are you willing to eat for the lifestyle that's pretty good? Because that is really what living your truth is. It's what struggles are you willing to embrace? What challenges are you willing to take on? Because the benefits are worth it to you. That is the question I really want you to ask yourself when you're thinking, is this the right kind of lifestyle for me? It's not so much, is this perfect? Does it fulfill me? Is it my passion? Is it like the most blissed out, amazing thing? I think a much more clarifying question is the challenges of this. Are they worth it to me? Is it worth it to me to do what I need to do on the hard days of this? Is it worth it to me to do what I need to do in the things that are confusing about this, the things that aren't working out about this? Yeah? Because I want that enough to put in that effort. I follow the heart calling. Is it worth it? Exactly. So expecting that there's going to be challenges, there are going to be struggles, there are going to be things that are shitty about anything that you choose, any relationship that you choose, any career you choose, any lifestyle you choose to live, any, health program or way of supporting your body that you choose. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. Nothing is ever going to be fully aligned to the point where you don't ever struggle and you don't ever question it and you don't ever feel like this is shitty. That is not reality. The reality is there are going to be things that come up that suck. There are going to be things in your relationship that are like struggles that you struggle with for years. That doesn't mean you're in the wrong relationship. Right? Like, sometimes it does. if there are really non-negotiables where it's like, I am never going to be able to feel happy and supported and okay in this, if this never changes, that's, this is not worth it to me. This is not worth it to me. There may be things where you say, okay, even if this never changes and this is like a shitty struggle in my relationship, the relationship itself is still good enough that it's worth it to me. And that's what we have to ask ourselves. Is the struggle worth it to me? So then maybe it is important to learn overcoming inner struggling. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say here. A huge part of knowing ourselves is not necessarily all about knowing what we love and what feels good. But it's also about acknowledging that there are going to be things that are shitty and challenging all in any choice you make, in everything you do. You are going to be called to grow in every relationship you ever have. You are going to be called to grow in every job you ever have. You are going to face struggle. You are going to face coworkers being shitty to you. You are going to face having to quit a job and start again. You are going to face having to take classes that you are not interested in order to get towards the degree that you want. You are going to have to, right? Get up and work out even when you don't want to sometimes. That's always going to be a part of living your truth. There are going to be days where that thing you're passionate about, you don't care about it today. Or you don't want to have to do the things that you have to do for that passion today. And that doesn't make it wrong. That doesn't mean you don't know yourself. That doesn't mean you're on the wrong track. So asking yourself, what is the shit sandwich I'm willing to eat? What is the struggle that is worth it to me? Again, is the struggle of this relationship, even though it's maybe a continual struggle and we don't know how we're going to fix it, worth sticking it out because the rest of the relationship is good enough? Is good enough. So this is so true, there's no perfect scenario, but how do we overcome that never-ending anxiety of uncertainty or the same dull cycles at times? Again, is it worth it to you? And then we can always ask ourselves, am I holding myself back from taking the steps I know I need to take to make things different? And again, right? That is where we come up against, okay, what I'm living isn't fulfilling me, isn't feeling good enough. So number one, looking at the blame, shame, and guilt and making sure that the reason it's not fulfilling is because we feel like it's not fulfilling, not because society says it's not good enough, not because it's the perpetual not enough of our culture. So that's another big key to this. Our culture of never enough is always going to tell you that you are inadequate on some level, that what you have isn't good enough, right? I've been on YouTube for 10 years. I still don't have 10,000 subscribers. Most people would say, that sucks, you're failing. You should feel bad about that. You should do things to make it bigger. And your business isn't huge and all of these things. You're not on Oprah. And for me, at the end of the day, I'm like, no, I know what I have is good enough. Because in my day-to-day life, I am satisfied. I am satisfied with the work that I'm doing. I'm satisfied with the content I'm putting out. I have enough. I don't need to earn more money. I don't need to do more work. I feel good about who I'm supporting and what I'm doing. And it's small, and the world is not going to validate it. So that's the first key. Are you feeling not enough and uncertainty and dull because culture is telling you that what you have is not enough, or because it really doesn't feel good enough for you? Okay, so those are the two differences. I really want you to, that's why, again, right, the mystery school is all about unpacking the shame, blame, and guilt that we all got that teaches us that we're never enough, that we're never good enough, that who we are isn't enough, that what we're achieving is never enough, there's always someone doing better than us. So, are you thinking that you're not enough? Are you thinking you're not living your right life? Are you thinking your life isn't good enough? Because you genuinely don't feel that way? Don't feel like it is? Or because culture is telling you that it isn't? So that's the first step. Do your unpacking work. Is it actually enough? Is it fine? Is it that you had this expectation of perfection and that's not what you're experiencing and therefore you think that you're doing it wrong? Is it an expectation that if you really find that thing that you love, it's going to be perfect right away? And really what you're experiencing is that you have to build up to it. So a lot of the time, again, right, like we do discover the career that we're supposed to have. We do discover the relationship that is right for us. And it's really hard and challenging in the beginning. For the first couple of years. It's not perfect. And it's not ideal. And we have to put in a lot of work to build up to where we want to go. And so understanding that just because we found the right thing doesn't mean it's automatically going to feel good all the time, or that it's automatically going to be perfect, or that we're not going to have to shift things, right? So learning that we're going to have to maybe change jobs, or, narrow our focus a little, or change this or change that. So are you expecting perfection when it's actually going to be a path? Are you feeling like it's not enough because other people are telling you it's not enough, or because you actually feel like it's not enough? And then at the end of the day, if you feel like it's not good enough, if you feel like it's unsatisfying and dull and not enough, then the next step is, okay, where are you not acknowledging the things you want to do and the steps you need to take that you know deep down you need to take? Because here's the other thing. Almost all of us know what we need to do. We know what we need to do. We're just afraid to do it. We're afraid to acknowledge it. We're afraid to bring it up because it's going to be scary. Okay? So again, I validate that, right? I've been in that position a million times where I'm like, I hate what I'm doing. This isn't the right thing. I know that I have this next growth level I need to reach, but it's going to require me quitting this job and starting a new one for lower pay. Right? And culture would tell me that's not a good thing to do. But my heart was telling me that is the right thing to do. So am I going to trust myself enough to take my steps? Or am I going to stay where I feel comfortable and familiar? So that's what I would say in the last thing. If you're really feeling dissatisfied, if you're really feeling like it's not good enough, number one, is it just hard because it's hard? Is it just hard because you have to build up to it? Is it not satisfying because you're not there yet, but you can tell inside that it's the right path? Or do you have some steps you need to take that you're just scared to take right now? And if that is the case, compassion. Compassion for yourself. Even letting yourself off the hook, telling yourself you don't have to do it. Because you don't. You are allowed to stay where you are. You are allowed to stay in the comfort of what you know and to not take that step. There is no rule that says you have to keep growing and you have to keep going and you have to do that next thing. Make it okay to not do it. And oftentimes, the second we do that, things get really clear. We okay, I totally know what I need to be doing next. I totally know what my next step is. The second I give myself permission to not have to do it, it becomes very clear. So, if you're really feeling like it's not right, I guarantee you, you probably know the next step you need to take. You're just writing it off. You're undervaluing it. You're afraid of it. And all of that is totally okay and normal. But if you really check in with yourself, do you have an idea of what your next step is? And I can guarantee you, you probably do. Okay, so I want to know how to return trust in own labor. For example, yoga teaching. So again, sometimes we are going to have to own the idea that that thing we're passionate about is never going to be valued by the system enough that we can make it our living. That's a harsh reality for some of us that we just need to accept. Not all of us have a passion that society values enough that we can make it our career. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable. That doesn't mean that it's not important to you and that you shouldn't pursue it. But again, we can't put our entire value of self in the context of our capitalist system and expect to feel good about ourselves, because we're not going to. What our system chooses to value and not value has oftentimes no reflection on what is actually valuable and what isn't. Right? Look at the things our culture tends to value. Things that are quick, things that are flashy, things that are easy, things that are entertaining and stimulating and numbing. So you come with like some real deep shit. A lot of the time that's just not going to be valued. So on some level you can say, well, am I willing to play the game enough to make this a viable career? Am I willing? So again, what kind of shit sandwich are you willing to eat? So with teaching yoga, are you willing to do the hustle? Are you willing to do the selling yourself? Are you willing to be on social media and doing all these things that you kind of have to do to make yoga a career? Is that the shit sandwich you're willing to do because you really want this to be the thing you do for your career? Or are you going to say, no, I'm not willing to do that. That's not a shit sandwich I'm willing to eat. So the shit sandwich I'm willing to eat is I will have another job and I will do yoga on the side and I will never expect it to be my income. I will do it because it's my passion. I will do it and I will just allow it to be my passion, and I'm not going to sell it to the system. I'm not going to sell out. I'm not going to do any of the things that I would have to do in order to make it viable in our system, because I don't want to do that. I want to keep some level of purity. So that's what you would do. What shit sandwich are you willing to eat? It's taking what you know you want to do and then being realistic about, okay, what does that actually look like in our system? And again, which shit sandwich am I willing to eat? Okay, can you share any guidance on how we can root deeper in our own values in the face of feeling pressured by others to conform to their expectation of you? Okay, so that's the last thing I want to talk about, right? Is the shame, blame, and guilt. Most of us know way more about ourselves than we think that we do. We've just been trained and indoctrinated to think that that's what's wrong with us. And this is why self-love, this self-love path of compassion and curiosity, slowly building safety with ourselves, learning how to accept that we are going to be rejected, that we are going to be misunderstood, that we are going to be shamed, blamed, and guilted by people around us, and learning to support ourselves as adults, to step into that adult perspective, to really understand that we can be rejected, we can be told we're not good enough, we can be, right? We're all gonna face that. I think we're all gonna face that. The having to learn to accept the things about ourselves that are true about ourselves, that we have been trained our entire lives are wrong and bad and stupid about us. That is the real journey of self-discovery. That is the real journey of self-discovery. It's not that you don't know who you are. It's that you've been trained and taught to reject who you are. And that these things you know about yourself that get you rejected, that got you shamed, having to embrace them and having to live them, even in the face of that shame, blame, and guilt from the outside. So that is the hardest part of this. And that, again, is why I say, like, the mystery school is so long. That's why I put out a million videos. That's why I'm talking about this stuff over and over and over and over again. Learning how to make yourself a safe place with you. So we start with, again, all of our bad habits, all of our things we think are wrong with us that we need to fix, our coping, our numbing, our self-sabotaging. All of the things that we reject about our emotional reactions to things, and the things we reject about ourselves and our personalities, and that all that stuff we think is wrong and bad about us. Learning to have compassion for that. Learning to say, okay, I'm not going to go into shame, blame, and guilt. If I'm not actually feeling shame about this, if I'm not feeling guilty, what am I actually feeling? So starting to get in contact with our actual emotions. You see? If you're not actually feeling shame and blame and guilt, every time you think you're feeling shame, blame, and guilt, I want you to ask yourself, am I actually feeling angry at having to do something that I don't want to do, that I've been told my whole life I have to? Am I feeling sad and hurt and rejected right now, and I'm trying to fix myself to try to get rid of that feeling? Instead of being able to learn to own who I am and what I feel and what I want to do, and then having to face that the world is not going to approve of that and making that okay. These are the steps we have to start taking. So it's not so much about discovering who you are in the sense of, like, again, like, thinking where that discovering who you are is all about, like, I'm discovering my passions and I'm discovering the things that I love and I'm discovering the, it's like a whole bunch of discovering who you are is learning to feel what you actually feel. So that you can start to actually be like, okay, right? My emotional response to this is a no. Even though it's something that culture tells me I'm supposed to be doing, it's not right for me. I don't like it. And trusting that. Or this is like a yes for me. I really like this. I'm really interested in this. I really care about this. And allowing yourself to care about it. Allowing yourself to do it, even though other people think it's stupid. I guarantee you, again, it's probably not that you don't know. It's that you've been conditioned to have shame, blame, and guilt about these things, and to look for approval as your permission slip to be and to own your values. And we have to learn to let that go. Society is probably not going to approve of you. To a degree, they are going to have to. But again, where can you learn to have that compassion and curiosity for yourself that you have been trained not to have? Where can you start to accept those things you really actually do love? And just say, okay, people might think this is stupid. People are going to think it's stupid. Like, I remember first showing, like, my first blogs to one of my friends. And she's like, oh, it's all about food. Like, that's so dumb and stupid. And, right, there was a part of me that was like, oh, okay. I'm sorry. Right? And I had to just be like, okay, but this matters to me. This is what I'm interested in right now. And I followed that. And lots of people thought it was stupid. And lots of people thought it was inappropriate or, unimportant. But it was the thing that led to my career, right? I started in nutrition. I started in health. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here. That's not what I'm doing now. So again, remember, knowing myself back then, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I know totally different things about myself now. My life is totally different now. I built up to this now. And it wasn't always like this. But it was worth it to me to take the steps. I had no idea it was going to end in this. I didn't even know this was a thing. Right? This thing that I do There was no guidance counselor in grade 12 being like, you can be an online self-love helper. That wasn't a career option. But I was willing to follow the things I was interested in enough. I was willing to eat the shit sandwiches of working the shitty jobs because they were worth it and I could tell it was the right step. Okay? So where are you rejecting yourself? Where are you living in shame, blame, and guilt and waiting for people to validate you? And how can you learn to love and have compassion for yourself so you can start to own the things that you actually know about yourself? And that is hard. It is hard. Again, that's why I say the mystery school is so long. That's why people work with me one-on-one. That's why I put out all these videos. That's why I do this work, because it is hard. It's absolutely hard. But it's worth it, because living a life that aligns with what you value within the context of what we can do step by step by step. So again, right? 10 years ago, I could not afford to make the conscious choices that I can make in my purchases now. But I did my best with what I could at the time. Okay, so is life just hard when, where does positivity play a part in your life so to manifest good and easy way of life? So again, right? It's not one or the other. It's not one or the other. Life is always going to be both. Life is always going to have easy things, things that are working, things that feel good to us, things that we're following, things that we're building, and struggles and things that are hard and things that aren't great. We're not ever going to live a perfect life. So again, are you living in alignment with your values enough that what you're doing, that the challenges you're facing are worth it, and that you can tell they're building you towards something? It's worth the struggle. If it's all struggle and it's all garbage, again, do not blame yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not making a wrong choice. You're not doing things badly, right? We have to look at societal context. We have to look at the options we have available to us. And we have to be honest and realistic about what we have and the steps that we can take to make things better for ourselves without going into shame, blame, and guilt. If it's all stress and struggle, check in with yourself, right? Where are you living in alignment with the values that you're being told you need to versus what's actually real and true for you? And again, I get it, okay? Those of us who never had a secure connection, those of us who learned to just be what everyone around us wanted us to be so that we would be safe and feel like we can be okay, we never got to step into that adult perspective yet. It's hard. And that's why I make all these videos, and sometimes we need help, and sometimes we need a program, sometimes we need therapy. There's nothing wrong with that. But learning to embrace what you actually value and living by that without expecting the world to approve of you all the time. Without expecting that everyone is going to be on your side about this. Without expecting that it's going to be perfect right away and that there aren't going to be shit sandwiches you have to eat. That is how we live a life. Okay? So you probably know more about yourself than you think that you do. It's just, are you willing to acknowledge what you know about yourself? Are you willing to build on the things you know about yourself? Are you willing to trust the things you know about yourself? And know that the more that you do that, the more you're going to discover about yourself. Okay? We are never going to get to the end of knowing ourselves perfectly and having this perfect, easy life. There's always going to be something to grow into. There's always going to be a next step. There's always going to be something to discover about ourselves and about the world and about what we like doing and what we don't like doing. And things about you are going to change. There are going to be phases of your life where this is really important and feels awesome, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, I don't want that anymore. We have to make room for the fluctuations, the changes, and the challenges. We have to understand we all live in an imperfect system where we are not supported in just figuring out who and what we like, and everyone can just have a perfect career that aligns with what we love and pays the bills. And that's shitty. And we need to validate that. If that's the situation you're in, that's not your fault. And again, over and over, I will say, the way that society values your labor is not your value. Ever. You are so much more than what you do. And your humanity is so much more than what you do. So don't center your whole life around what you do. And then last, we got to go on that journey of re-embracing all the things about ourselves we have learned to shame, blame, and guilt away. Understanding that our emotional responses to things are our messenger system. That you're not broken. We need to stop pathologizing everything. If you feel shitty about a thing, maybe it's because it's not right for you. It's not for you to try to fix yourself to be good at it. Okay, so what if it's not outside things, but your health, for example, that is a blockage? Right? I live that too. That's what I'm saying. I'm chronically ill and will always be chronically ill. It's a shit part of my life. And I'm constantly doing whatever I can do to support myself. I've made steps. I've gotten better. And it's a thing I constantly navigate. We do our best. So there are always going to be days that are just shitty days. Because I feel shitty. And that's what being chronically ill is. But that doesn't mean that my entire life is shit, or that I have to throw it all away, or that I can't have a positive mindset about the things that are amazing, and the things that are good, and the things I am capable of. This is what I'm saying, right? There's no perfect. So we take our current context into context. We support ourselves to the best of our ability. We allow for the shit things. We allow ourselves to be sad. I think I've been fighting too hard against shit. Exactly. Go back and watch this whole thing, because I talked a lot about this. The shit is part of it. Again, right? There are struggles in my life I'm never going to get rid of. I'm never going to be optimally healthy. So there are going to be days, there are going to be weeks, there are going to be months where things just suck. Doesn't mean I don't know myself, doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong, doesn't mean I'm missing something. It's just the cards I was dealt. Right? Okay, I am also chronically ill. How do you give yourself grace when it comes to not being able to do what other people can do? Again, right? It's hard. And I think people are looking for, how do I make it easy to give myself grace when other people, it's not easy. There's no easy way. Learning to be kind and compassionate to yourself, I think accept that that's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to learn to have compassion for yourself instead of beating up on yourself and feeling like shit about yourself, or just letting yourself go into the pit. Learning to be nice to yourself is a learned skill over time. Like I said, this is why the mystery school is 5 years long. There isn't an easy way. It's practice. You give yourself grace to the degree that you can do it today, and then you do it again tomorrow, and then you do it again the next day, and you will notice you will build your capacity as you practice. I am good enough. I am so sorry. Right? So, and again, How do you give yourself grace when you're noticing that you can't do it with other people? Are you going to shame about that? Because if there's shame, I want to ask you, what are you really feeling? Are you sad? Are you resentful? Are you angry? Do you need to let yourself just be mad at God today? Because if you're stuck in the shame, you're not feeling what you're actually feeling. So learning to give yourself grace is, again, where am I covering what I'm really feeling with shame, blame, and guilt? I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. I can't do what everyone else can do, and that's shitty about me. I think what you're really feeling is sad, disappointed, angry at God or the universe or whatever it is that you believe in, or just fate. And then you got to let yourself feel your real emotions. Let yourself process your real emotions. Let yourself feel what you're actually feeling. And then you might notice that the next couple of days you feel fine. You can move forward, and then you'll get mad again. And then you let yourself really feel it instead of going into shame, blame, and guilt. So that's another way to answer the question of how do I live my values? Where are you feeling shame? What are you actually feeling? And then on the other side of processing that emotion, allowing yourself to have that emotion, what do you want to do? And where can you do it, even though other people might not approve of it and might not validate it and might not say that it's okay? Okay? Does that answer your question? It's a muscle we work. What are you really feeling? How can you support your real, true emotions? And then where can you go from there? How can you start to accept what you can do and what you are capable of? And how can you start to make that enough? You got to validate it. You have to make it okay. Again, how do I live in alignment with my values? You have to make it good enough, even if other people don't. You have to say, well, it's worth it to me, even if you think it's stupid. It's a muscle. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. But we do it with practice and with time. Okay, this is getting long now. Did that answer your questions? I hope that was helpful. Feel your real emotions. What is worth it to you? What struggle is worth it to you? You are not your labor. Society doesn't have it figured out about what makes us feel good and what makes us feel bad. You are worthy of compassion and feeling good about yourself no matter what. Is your dissatisfaction because the path is hard? Is your dissatisfaction because society is telling you you're not good enough? Is your dissatisfaction because you're feeling shame, blame, and guilt instead of what you're really feeling? Or is your dissatisfaction because you know what steps you need to take and you're just not ready to take them yet? Or because you're looking for approval that's never going to come? Or you're looking for safety that's never going to come? Or you're looking for security in taking that next step that's never going to come? You're just going to have to take the risk and see what happens. Learn to catch yourself. Learn to be an adult. Okay, that's so true. The only time I've actually felt really bad about being unwell only because I have to make a living. If I didn't, I don't even mind just existing with my illness. Yeah, great questions. Thank you. Okay. Okay? Yeah, totally. I get it. And so again, don't feel shame, blame, and guilt. Let yourself feel the real emotions you feel. Have compassion for yourself. How can I support myself? How can I take care of myself outside of the jobs that I work that I don't want to work? How can I be on my own side? How can I build a life outside of work that does revolve around the things that I like, even if my work doesn't? You do the best you can. Do the best you can within the circumstances you're in. Okay? Okay. I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I will see you next week. And until then,